What happens when your new truck breaks down and it sits in the dealership for months trying to get fixed? Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus as we talk. In this video, I got the full story for you from one owner named AC who had bought a Silverado 1500 with 3-liter Duramax diesel. He ran into a problem with thrust bearing, which I've reported on this channel, that's affecting some of those diesel engines. And he did detail how he went from buying this truck to going to lemon law process to working out with GM different ways, case closed, case reopened. It is quite the story. So sit back, pop top, pour a little something in your coffee, whatever you need to do to relax and enjoy this video because it's a good one. Okay, let's hop right into it. So you have gone through the buyback process, and the cool thing is you volunteered to be interviewed to share your experience. That way, others can know not just how to get the process started. Or I saw somebody the other day posted just a resolution, but like the whole process. Like, what does it all take when you do get a vehicle or your truck in this case, where it's a lemon, which unfortunately in this day and age still seems to happen. But if it does, what do you do? Well, I mean, let's walk through this process. And I know you have some notes and things. So I'm going to kind of hand it to you, and I will be here asking questions. Well, when things pop in my head. So take it away.
Sure. Okay. Back in October, my wife and I decided to buy a truck. The idea was we needed something that would kind of fit the bill to potentially tow a toy hauler so we could haul around our Harley and go and visit places. And I think trucks are getting pretty expensive these days. So we really looked around and ended up finding a truck in Missouri that kind of fit the bill. um, we purchased a 25 Chevy Silverado 1500, the 3-liter diesel. I ended up flying early October out to Missouri and then driving it 1,000 miles home. So really fell in love with it right out the gate. I mean, 1,000 miles, you kind of decide whether you like something or not. And did it basically in one day, drove straight back, and really loved the truck. Kind of fast forward maybe 2 weeks later, we were going to the NASCAR championship in Arizona. It was like our first NASCAR experience. We had these amazing tickets, and we loaded up on Friday to drive to Arizona. And about 120 miles out of our home city, the truck gets a reduced acceleration warning. And we're on the interstate. It's 75 miles per hour here in New Mexico. So we're doing 75. And all of a sudden, my truck just really zips back and can't accelerate, won't really do over 45 miles an hour. We got all these semis kind of flying by us. So it really posed a potential, safety risk, I think, as well as, hey, we just bought this brand new truck. We spent a ton of money on it. What's going on here? Must be some like, maybe it's just a sensor or whatnot. Um, I live in New Mexico and it's pretty rural out here. So 120 miles away. We had to try to navigate how to find a dealership. Where can we take it? How can we get this looked at? Um, And so my first experience with OnStar, I pressed the OnStar button, like, hey, can you tell us where there's a dealership? Really no help. And they're asking me to look things up on my phone as I'm driving. And, I was like, all right, this isn't going to work. Um, Kind of decided there, like, what are we paying for in this OnStar suite? And so I had my wife look it up. We ended up finding a dealership probably another 30 miles away and limped it to the dealership. Um, Upon getting to the dealership, they told us that they're really backed up and they'll try to get to it, but it's going to be 6 hours before they can even look at it. And I asked the guy checking me in if he could just, maybe plug it in and just kind of tell me what codes were flying. And come to find out, it was I think it was like a P060 or something. The thrust bearing was bad. And so this dealership tells me, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere. You don't want to have your truck here. Our suggestion is limp this truck back home to Albuquerque, 120 miles away, not being able to accelerate, and take it to a big dealership because they'll actually be able to help you. They'll give you a rental car, all these different things. So since we were in the midst of a vacation and on the way and had these spectacular tickets to go see NASCAR, we called around, and come to find out, not only is there's just not a single rental car in all of this city that we're in. It just, none of the companies, no cars available. The dealership wasn't willing to help us. So we end up limping it back 120 miles. I think we end up getting into Albuquerque sometime around 9 o'clock at night, drop it off, put the keys in the mailbox, and take an Uber to go get a rental car and then restart our vacation. That's like 8 hours away. And I've just inserted another 8 hours already for this day of what happened to our truck, what's going on. They told us at the first dealership that we were going to need a new motor and a new turbo. And this is basically all the information I had. So my background in the Marines, I want to take a proactive kind of standpoint and see what I can do about it. So I start looking around on the interwebs and YouTube, and I came across some of your videos that kind of pointed this out as a potential problem. And in doing my research, I found that 7 days prior to the purchase of my truck, after I've done months and months of research, which one do I want? What's going to fit the bill? What it'll do? 7 days prior to my purchase, I find that GM has quietly released a TSB, Technical Service Bulletin, stating that if you have these issues or this code, it could potentially be this thrust bearing, and you're going to need a motor replacement and turbo replacement. So I think anybody that's less than 30 days in and barely, I think it was like 1,400 miles at the time, 1,000 of those getting it back from the dealership. So like essentially 400 miles worth of driving this truck, and now I'm being told like it's on severe back order. It's probably gonna be months and months till they fix it, and too bad, so sad. You got this expensive truck and it's just gonna sit on a dealership and wait on these parts. So from there, I kind of started doing some research and seeing what my options were, seeing if I could reach out to GM and, kind of negotiate something. Like, it's such a brand new truck. They can't
Yeah.
possibly expect me to be out 4 months, while I'm still making payments on this thing. So a lot of back and forth. I think of note that might be kind of important, or couple things, and give you some background on where my head and mindset is on these things. We live in New Mexico, but we purchased it in Missouri. So I think this kind of started a new sort of, you had to think outside the box, because I can't just call the dealership that I bought it for. Well, I can call them, but it's really hard because we're 1,000 miles apart. And so
Right.
really didn't get anything from them. They're like, hey, reach out to GM. That's all we can tell you. And fair enough. So I start
Yeah.
navigating these kind of different steps to try to figure out what the best path forward is, and reached out to GM. They eventually, I would say probably a week or so in, they were able to give me, I'd say probably 14 days, I got a loaner car, which tiny little motor. It was a little Equinox, but it's something. I'm a veteran, so sometimes I got appointments at the VA. At least I got some transportation. Was the way I was looking at it. And so, kind of a timeline of events, of things that kind of took place. We bought it October 8th, drove it back. Halloween was the day that it essentially grenaded the motor and kind of started dealing with these kind of just back and forth with GM. Um, November 15th, which I guess is like, a couple weeks after it's gone down, I reached out and I said, hey, would you guys be interested in buying this back? Um, you know, Clearly you guys are having an issue with these trucks. Nobody's kind of telling me this information. Would you buy this truck back so that I can, just get in a new one? Um, and they denied my initial claim. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. You got to give us the time to, you know, really look into it and to do right by the customer and give us the 30 days. And so I think of note it's important to realize when you're going through this lemon law experience, it's different for every state, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so and it's not based off of where you live, it's based off of where you've purchased the truck. And
Mm.
I think that's a kind of important part of it because I initially reached out to New Mexico Attorney General and said, hey, what can you do for me? Is there any guidance you can give me? Is there any way to help? This is kind of what you guys are designed for. And essentially, also several attorneys and all the attorneys and the Attorney General all kind of pointed me to Missouri. So it's like, when you live 1,000 miles away, it's really hard to find a good attorney. What are you going to do to try to, locate one that's going to care about your case, that's going to take it in a serious manner, that's going to um, kind of put forth the work and effort for you? And that kind of opened a new can of worms and nightmares for me. Just the geographic location was really difficult to kind of weed through. So you start looking on YouTube. I started looking on Reddit. I was doing Google searches to try to figure out who would best serve me. And I think the information out there on lemon law is it's a little misleading, and it doesn't really give a lot of information on how the process works, when does it apply, how is it going to be situationally different depending on what state you are. And there's a lot of these big corporations that'll throw a ton of videos on YouTube, kind of, hey, this is our attorney, this is all we do, this is all lemon law. You call one of these and you don't talk to an attorney, you talk to, kind of some middleman that weeds through the stack and sees if you're going to qualify. Um, so with the large ones, I was never really able to reach an attorney and get some actual legal advice. Some of the smaller ones, I was able to get to an attorney, and I had more than one attorney tell me that essentially all they do is issue a demand letter based off of whatever your state lemon law is. And if they take it, GM pays them. If they don't take it, and this is depending on what state you're in. Some states require for the manufacturer to pay for the attorney fees. I think maybe some states do not. But in my case, they would have. That being said, they weren't interested in doing any other kind of work towards it. It's basically like a demand letter. Hey, this is what happened. It's been out of service for 30 days, and this is and this is what the law kind of says. So, in my mind, what value are these attorneys adding? My opinion, not much.
Yeah.
I can write a demand letter. Pretty much anybody can get on some kind of AI now and formulate something that would be a professional document. So I'm trying to navigate all these different resources. And I think December 4th, I finally decided, I found out about the Better Business Bureau Auto Line, which is GM's answer to arbitration prior to hiring an attorney. So I'm like, all right, well, let's go through this. BBB Auto Line is supposed to be a middleman to help navigate, and they're not on the side of the consumer and they're not on the side of the manufacturer. They'll just basically be a middleman and kind of help you navigate the process. I have not been able to get in touch still to this day with the person that was assigned to me. I've talked to some other people and they
Hmm.
all refer me back to this original agent that was assigned my case. But the individual really hasn't ever reached out to me. I have constant, tons of messages, recording on this date. Hey, could you give me a call? Could you give me an email? Send a text? How about a smoke signal? I know Morse code. I was in the military. Nothing. Um, so
Man.
I think at this time it starts ratcheting up the stress of it. We're 30 days in, so I carefully navigated and figured out it's been down for these days. There was some kind of, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, so I couldn't really tell whether it's 30 calendar days or 30 business days, and do they include Saturday or not, because all these different factors. So I started using AI to kind of guide me through when would be the best time to kind of play this out. So on December 4th, I filed with the BBB Auto Line, and I would say within hours or the next day, I was contacted by somebody from GM.
Hmm.
Um, so it went from my original advisor that I kept asking to buy back my vehicle, and then they changed me to a new group. I want to say it was the GM executive team or resolution team or something of that nature. Speaking with them, I think it was like within a couple of days, they tell me, yes, we're willing to do a buyback. Um, and so I try to navigate that and kind of get more information so that I can make a decision. What does the buyback mean? Are you just going to give me a check for exactly what I paid for? Am I out for any kind of tint I've put on the windows? All these different things. And you can't, it's really hard to make a decision on which is the best avenue to approach due to time and money and all these various different kind of variables that can play into it. So I think my mindset was get as much information as you can, and then I can sit down with my wife, make a decision as a team, and we can kind of navigate the process and figure out the best direction forward. Um, from everything that I gathered, it seemed like the attorney route would take at least 90 days, and they're not really advocating for you. They're just sending a demand letter. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty smart, I could probably navigate this. Um, Probably do it a little quicker than these attorneys that maybe have a bunch of cases. I think GM's probably, you know, possibly overwhelmed with all the different motor issues that have been taking place lately. Um, I quickly noticed that all the people, and I had four different agents that were helping me through this process, and they're very skilled at not really giving you the information or answering the questions that you're asking. So it was like, what would be a reasonable expectation for a timeline on this if I go this route? What are my options? Which ways can we go? Is it, can I get another vehicle as a replacement? Because I spent a long time and I negotiated this deal and kind of, at the time that I bought my truck, it was October of 25. 26 is already out. So it was on the dealership who is a high volume sales. They dropped the price down pretty good. So I don't think I'm going to get the same deal. Maybe I could just get in the same truck because the truck's beautiful. It's really nice and it's got great options and really meets all the requirements that I needed it to outside of the working part. So
There's that little piece.
yeah, you got to have a truck that works. It doesn't matter how pretty it looks. Will it get the
Right.
job done? And so navigating through this, I'm kind of building in the frustration level, um, and not really getting answers. And some of the answers I'm getting just seem wild to me. Like I had one lady told me that we wouldn't do a buyback for you unless it's at least a year. And I was like, what? Like, you're going to have my truck for a year and you wouldn't do a buyback? So I'm like, I don't think this is true. And then somewhere mysteriously, I get a call from this new agent who has different information and is willing to work in a different way with me. And I'm going to try not to give my personal thoughts and feelings and stick more to the fact kind of stuff here. But it seems very strange to me because a lot of these events coincided with something wild being told to me. And then, like, all of a sudden, I have this new person that's willing to, go this extra mile for me. But they're still not really giving me any information about here's the number we would give you if you go this route. Here's how long it would take if you go this route. So really you have a few different options when it comes to lemon law. You can kind of call GM, throw yourself at their feet and say, please help me. You can hire an attorney if it is out of service for the amount of days or attempts to fix within whatever your state laws kind of dictate. Or you can go this route with the Better Business Bureau Auto Line, which, in my opinion, is really kind of a shell game and a scam, if you ask me. Just the fact that I couldn't get answers back from anybody was really frustrating. So you have to upload all these different documents and kind of jump through all these hoops. It's like a warranty claim. Send us every receipt and your original agreements and what day of this, and then give this narrative, but make sure it's super clear and concise and short. And so those were the different routes to go. I think on December, I don't know, 6th through 8th, they told me they're going to buy back the truck. So I'm operating at this point, hey, we're doing a buyback repurchase. What does that mean? And I explained that I live 1,000 miles away from the dealership I had bought this truck. And I think I had falsely been advised or under the presumption that somehow I would have to get whatever truck that I had back to said dealership and do like a one-to-one swap with them back in Missouri. And I was like, well, that's not a great option.
No.
Like, that's 2,000 miles now and in a truck that probably has a new motor and turbo. And like, how does this work? So I kind of laid out all my frustrations. I was already out of pocket, like, I don't know, between $400 and $600 to rent the car on my own dime before I got a loaner. Still haven't been, still to this day, never received any kind of refund or payment for that. So keep that in mind. GM has this line where they say, you have to have if you're going to rent a vehicle, we'll reimburse you up to, I think it was $41 or $44 a day, but it's got to be in a GM vehicle. Well, what if you're in a city or you go to a place that doesn't have any GM vehicles available at that time? Now you're not going to be reimbursed? Like, that seems a little wild to me. I don't know how much they are sticklers to that point, but like I said, I'm over 111 days in and I still haven't been reimbursed for that. So, if you're putting that on a credit card and paying the juice on it, it kind of can add up. So kind of sticking with my timeline here, they tell me that I can do a 1-for-1 swap. And so I start contacting dealerships within my local city saying, hey, this is kind of what I'm dealing with. Would you be willing to help me and kind of be this host dealership that could arrange this kind of swap out for me? And I found somebody that was willing to do it. And so I'm proceeding. And the day after Christmas, I noticed that my BBB Auto Line has a new document on it. The agent didn't do a great job of kind of communicating with me. I couldn't talk to anybody at BBB Auto Line to figure out what this was. But this is 20 days after I've been operating under the impression that I'm getting this new truck and they're doing a 1-for-1 swap. And they issue this document, which basically saying that they will repurchase my truck, but it doesn't outline any kind of details. It doesn't give a timeline. It doesn't mention any kind of numbers. Um, I don't know when I'm doing this one for one swap due to the fact that we're in 25s are basically all sold. It creates a problem of, well, how do I find this new truck? Is it a MSRP to MSRP? Is it, hey, we really did you dirty. We sold you a truck. We probably knew that was going to explode in less than 2,000 miles. Pick any truck and we'll just give it to you. Like what are my expectations here? And my experience was really frustrating with GM because they don't want to answer that question. And it's really hard to get an answer out. So on the 26th, the day after Christmas, I'm well into, my second month of not having a truck, going through the holidays, not having a vehicle. My wife and I are sharing a vehicle. My other transportation's a motorcycle and it's winter, occasionally snows. So I get this document from GM saying that they're going to do it. And I fire back a response to this and say, you know, I'm not willing to accept this. You didn't lay out any of the terms. You didn't say within the next 60 to whatever days we will carry out this, or they they're really slow rolling me through this process. And then when I would get these documents, I would kind of probably too hastily respond because it's frustrating and I'm 2 months in already. So I sent them a demand back and I said, this is what I'm willing to accept. Um, I'm not trying to make money off of GM. I want to be clear on that. I don't think that I should be in a better position than I was prior to buying this truck, but I also don't think I should be out thousands of dollars of my own money when I negotiated under good faith and they withheld material information from me that probably would have swayed me from not buying that truck. Um, I really feel like GM kind of didn't step up to the plate on this one and probably could have been a little bit more forthcoming and not put themselves in this position. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not a $1 billion company. I don't know how these guys run. I'm sure some bean counter in there decided it'll be less money if we go this route, or I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. Um, so I file this response on the 26th right after they give it to me, and I basically say, no, I'm not willing to accept this. You need to give me a document that clearly outlines what I'm getting. I give them like 14 days to respond, or I'm going to an attorney. So I call up my GM rep again, and she explains to me, well, you went a little high and to the right. Honestly, that was just us agreeing to buy back your truck. It wasn't laying out any stipulations. And I'm like, well, didn't we discuss this on December 6th? When you said, yes, we'll buy it back. Apparently it takes 20 days, and I get it. It's the holidays, and I'm also not the GM's only customer. Maybe these things take a while. So I had to eat some crow and a little bit embarrassed. And I apologized to, this lady that's been helping me. And I'm really trying to be kind and navigate through this because, I got to enjoy myself when I look in the mirror. And if I'm a real big jerk, which I'm sure many people that call those lines are, I wanted to be a good Christian man and be able to look at myself without being a jerk. So I apologized and I said, look, I didn't really realize it. Forget whatever letter I sent you. This is what I need. I need you guys to be more forthcoming. Send me a document that actually clearly outlines everything. That way my wife and I can make a decision. And this whole time my GM reps saying, well, we can just send you a check for it. Okay, well, what does that number look like? Can you give me any indication? And artfully, they dodge the answer to that. I'm not certain if it's they can't answer that question, or it's a different department that can answer it. But you never really talk to anybody through this whole process that's allowed to make the decisions, from what I understand. You're only allowed to work with these middlemen. So she's like, "Oh, well, I could set up arbitration with the BBB Auto Line." And I'm like, "Well, what does that do?" She said, "Well, basically it gets somebody in between us so that I can better guide you." And I'm like, "Well, I feel like our communication's fine. You're just not answering any of my questions." So we kind of go back and forth. Um, she finally says, "Look, we're going to do an MSRP to MSRP. You'll be responsible for anything over. And a stipulation to this is that, um, from my understanding and what she told me, which I later verified, was that essentially what happens is you keep your current loan on your truck, and they do what's called like a collateral swap. So you go in, you sign some documents, your bank agrees to change the VIN number. It'll be a 26 instead of a 25. So I imagine the banks would be fine with that. Um, and if there's any over, you're responsible for doing that. So I think the sticker on my original truck was, we'll call it 72,300. So now I got to find a truck that fits all these bills, that is real close in MSRP, and I'm told you can't go below that, only above or exact. And those are kind of my guidelines. So I'm trying to work with dealerships. We got a bunch of back and forth. Meanwhile, my truck still isn't fixed, and we're into January now. And the dealership finds me another Chevy Silverado 1500 high country with the max tow package and the 3-liter diesel, like I'm looking for. It's in Pennsylvania. And I think this is probably around late January, like the 22nd, maybe. So
A
I get
great time to drive
excited.
in Pennsylvania in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah. I I also I tell my rep, I'm like, "Well, how am I going to get this truck? Like, what's the deal here? I don't even have my old truck back. Like, what's the story?" And so a couple days later, she calls me back and she's like, "I got approval. GM's going to send you this truck. You don't have to pay for the shipping. We'll just deliver it to this dealership." And I'm like, "Yes, this is
Yeah.
great. I will accept this one." I didn't care what color it was. I didn't care what the interior color was. I'm trying to work with GM here and not be a jerk, but you know, also, I think you buy a truck with its intended purpose in mind. And so you don't want to, get a max tow with a 3-liter diesel and then get a 5.3 that's an AT4, two different purposes for those trucks. So I'm trying to work with them as best as I can. And I get the okay from the dealership, and they said, "This one's available." I talked to their dealership. GM's agreed to ship it. So I'm super excited. I tell my wife, "Yes, score one for the home team." I call my friends, finally put this to bed. Um, Come to find out, the way this process works is that GM doesn't own any of the dealerships, and the dealerships are all private. And so it's at their discretion whether they want to do a solid for the manufacturer or not. Due to the fact that my truck was a bit of a unicorn in the sense that it had the tow mirrors and the max tow and configured the way that I had it, it's a high ticket item and people really want this truck. Um, Somewhat of a unicorn, because I think there was like maybe 3 in the country. And mind you, the dealership isn't doing any of this legwork and research to find where these trucks are or what dealership they're at. I'm every day going on the website, looking at dealership websites, reaching out and contacting GMs or, managers within these organizations, explaining, this is the situation I'm in. Would you be willing to work with us? So I think I have this deal done, and the dealership's like, "Yeah, we're not sending that to you. And if we do, you're going to have to send us like 4 or 5 of your trucks in trade for it, or 4 or 5 different vehicles in trade. So I quickly find out that while the GM of my local dealership, who has never made a dollar off of me, is willing to kind of try to jump through some of these hoops for me, they really don't have a vested interest to, really put it to these other dealerships that are states and states away. And it quickly looks like there's no way you're getting a truck from, all these states. Even if GM's willing to pay for it, these dealerships aren't going to give up such a high ticket item that probably there's a lot of margin built into. So of course I think this deal's done. I've been waiting 3 months and I'm like, all right, stick a fork in it, it's done. No, we're back to the drawing table. And I think, well, I'll get to lessons learned after I got a couple, but I think navigating the system, it's really hard when you don't have the information. It's hard to make a clear decision on which path forward if nobody's really giving you the information. So I got the dealership on one side, I got the manufacturer on the other side. In the middle is BBB Auto Line that's never reached out or communicated with me. I got, my expectations, my wife's expectations, like there's a lot to manage in these. And it takes a really long time. So after we find out that we can't do this, I reach out to the original dealership that I had bought a truck from. They have a ton of inventory. They're real high volume sales in Missouri. I'm sure you could figure out which one it is if you do any kind of Google on who sells the most GM vehicles in Missouri. So I'm reaching out to these guys and I'm like, look, here's my situation. I bought my truck from you guys. Nobody really disclosed this information, that came out 7 days prior. And of course, the sales team's like, oh, we didn't even know about this. We've never even heard of it, kind of thing. I don't want to take any kind of blame response. They weren't calling me back. Finally, we were able to locate somebody within the GM, like in the dealership network, because they have several different dealerships, that's willing to work with me. We pick out a truck. I make all these concessions to try to just make it happen because we're nearing 4 months in. I make all these concessions like, okay, well, it doesn't have to be a high country. It can be anything under the GM. It could be a Silverado or Sierra. Okay, we don't care what the color is. Okay, fine. There's no max tows out there, but I still need the 3-liter diesel. So they end up trying to work this deal where they were going to give us an AT4. My wife liked it better. I think you lose about 4,000 pounds of tow capacity on those. Different gearing, you name it. But we're willing to make this deal. So finally, I get kicked over to this new group and start navigating with this new lady, and back and forth. The dealership's not sending over the paperwork that we need in order to send you the documents. And the whole time I'm explaining, well, how am I supposed to get to Missouri? How am I supposed to get back? I've already paid for all the costs to fly out there originally and drive back. Another part of it was they wouldn't do the registration and state registration for me because it's Missouri. I had to wait and pay the taxes and do the registration when I got home. So I think that was like 4 or 5 grand out of pocket to pay for those, not tied into our loan that we've already paid and invested into this truck. And so eventually GM sends me over the document, and it's more expensive than my current loan. It's not a collateral change. They want to pay off my loan, have me take out a new loan, and it would be a higher amount that, on this truck that I'm already paying on for the last 4 months that I haven't gotten to drive. And oddly coincides with the day my truck gets fixed. So they call me, send me this document. But at the same day, I get a call from, funny enough, I'm actually getting a phone call from GM at the moment. I'm going to send them to voicemail. Anywho, so they coincide. So I'm in my mind, I'm like, well, are they trying to get me to keep my current truck? You and I kind of spoke when we first talked, and I think a lot of the frustration in this lemon law process is, does your truck lose value once it gets a new motor and turbo in it? And I would argue that if it happened at 30,000 miles, I think it could increase the value of your truck. If it happens at 2,000 miles, I think it significantly decreases the value of your truck in the sense that you don't know if all the kinks are worked out. It's not the factory that's assembling and their processes and their quality control and their checks. You're relying on your local dealership to kind of put all that stuff together. So maybe I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I think this process is, super frustrating and hard and not clear how to navigate. You're dealing with all these different kind of avenues that you can take it, and it's a choose your own adventure, but we're not going to give you much information on it. Um, so we end up rejecting the offer from GM and saying, well, yeah, I'm not going to pay more for a AT4 than, this other truck that was actually going to fit the purpose that I wanted. Interestingly enough, the lemon law in Missouri states that it has to be almost identical or something that's acceptable by the customer. An AT4 is not the same truck, but they had the same MSRP, so they're willing to do that. So we ended up rejecting that and saying, look, that's not going to work for us. We got to go back to the drawing board. I can't be expected to drive 1,000 miles there. Also, my wife would have to come because we're both on the loan and title and all that stuff. So she's got to take off of work. We got to drive 1,000 miles on this new truck that's kind of unproven, that mysteriously got fixed the day that they finally give me this offer. Yeah, it just posed all these different issues. And so we reject it. I'm pretty frustrated. So I realized I need to take a day or two off before I contact GM again, give myself a cool down period so I don't say anything too aggressive or over the top. And when I call in to this lady that I've been working for the past 2 months with, she tells me your case is closed. GM has closed your case. I said, what? Like, what do you mean it's closed? She's like, I don't know what to tell you. Your case is closed. I can't advise you any further. So I lose my mind at this point. I'm like, this has got to be a joke. This is just so unacceptable. I tell my wife, I've had it. I don't know what else to do. I reached out to one of the attorneys that I had talked to earlier, and he essentially told me, look, man, you're already at the finish line. I can't add any value to what you're doing. You're just gonna have to work this out. Like, if you hire me, not only am I not gonna add any value, but it's probably gonna take another 90 days. So I'm like, can't get BBB Auto Line on the line to help and navigate. GM now doesn't want to talk to me. Attorneys are saying they don't add any value to all the things that I've already navigated. None of
Oh
the
my.
dealerships really want to take any kind of, you know, they're not taking ownership of what I'm going through here. Meanwhile, we're paying out this large sum every month for nothing. Yeah, really terrible experience. And that's kind of when I reached out to you and said, hey, would you be interested in doing something on this? I can't even believe this. Um, Maybe 2 or 3 days after this all goes through, I think it's the Monday, the 16th, February 16th. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call GM one more time. Like, I just can't even believe that they're stonewalling me like this. Like, I just felt so gaslit at that point. It was like, you're a Marine. You're not going to, just roll over and play dead. You need to call these people and, make some demands and do something, It's my inner Marine kicks in. I call back and basically wait on the line through this executive, kind of department. And instead of requesting the person that's told me that they've closed my account, um, I'll get the next available operator. And so I get this lady on the line and I explain kind of all the steps I've gone through. I'm sure there's got to be like a zillion pages because, the kind of person I am, I'm calling in daily and saying, "Hey, where are we at on this? What are you doing for me? I'm not going away." Squeaky wheel gets some grease kind
Mhm.
of deal. And she says, "Please don't call me for the next few days. I'm going to reopen this. Just give me a couple days to figure it out." I said, "Done." Okay. So
Yeah.
now we're reopened. Like, it's been this constant roller coaster of up and down. Am I making the right decisions? Am I making a $70,000 mistake for my family and our future? All the emotions that are tied into it. And, meanwhile, I'm trying to be this good Christian man and pray on it and be kind to people and, not ask for more than what just don't have me in a worse position than I was before and I'll go away. Like I don't expect GM to kind of say, "Hey, here's $1 million truck and you paid this amount for that truck. Take this one." Like that's just not how I operate. But I do want them to take ownership and stand up and like not put me in a worse position. That deal in Missouri would have been, I probably would have lost, 7, 8 grand on that deal. Um, so a couple days later, I get called from the GM of this dealership, I think the 19th, February 19th. And he says, "Hey, like 3 months ago, you came in here and did a build sheet. Is this still the truck you want?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, originally, that's all I wanted. Hey, GM, take as long as you need. I got this loaner. Rebuild me a truck and send it out to me." Um, I think of note, they returned my truck to me as fixed, like the same day that I get this offer. But then, like 2 days later, I get another error code and it wasn't quite driving right. Felt like I wasn't shifting very good. Um, Ended up having to take it back. They said it was a mass air sensor, but really it felt like just maybe, I don't know, everything wasn't put back together exactly how it should be. So it's now down for another week. Now I have no loaner car. I've kind of burnt my bridges with the dealership because, at this point I'm so frustrated after they told me, "Hey, we got this truck for you," and that deal falls through. So I'm like, "Look, just fix it. Call me when it's ready, what have you." Um, so I currently have my truck. Uh, Apparently on the 19th, they put it in an order. They called to confirm that it had been accepted. Uh, I can't do an exact quote of what the GM from the dealership told me, but he said, "Wow, I've never seen anybody able to kind of obtain this. You must have some good friends over at GM. Not only did they accept it, but they're fast tracking it for you." So I guess all this to say, GM really has kind of stepped up at the final hour. As far as I know, my new truck's being built, and should be delivered sometime in the next few months. I was able to kind of negotiate that they weren't going to take off money for the use on my current truck. Um, and essentially, there's a difference in MSRP. Take out a new loan, we'll pay off your old one, and give you this new truck. So ultimately, I'll be in a better position. I'll have a truck from factory. Hopefully, they've worked out some of the kinks with this thrust bearing issue by now, which I feel like they have. Um, but I feel like throughout the process, as a consumer, I was making a ton of concessions and not really getting any answers or anything back. And so the frustration builds and builds like, "Hey, I'm willing to work with you guys, but you're kind of gaslighting me and making it seem like you're doing me the favor." Well, doing me the favor is not selling me the truck in the first place when you know that there's this issue. I feel like that's kind of the case on that. But I
So
guess we'll see. It's been an up and down and roller coaster.
yeah, and I'm glad you laid all that out. We had talked on the phone, and I said, "Don't tell me anymore because I'm gonna have 1,000
Yeah.
questions." And then stuff. I think it's obviously an odyssey what you went through. This is incredible. Either a combination of really bad luck or really bad communication with people. It's just whatever combination it is, it shouldn't be that hard. But I think the thing
Sure.
that people are going to ask is, where do you think GM's quality there now is? Like, if you get the new truck, do you feel like you'll be satisfied and you'll think this truck's going to last 100,000 miles or something at this point, or do you have questions in your mind now because you've gone through this experience?
I would say that if you look at the totality of the truck market, all the dealerships are going through a ton of different quality control issues. Um, I predominantly bought Toyotas for a very specific reason, and I feel like everybody knows that. But Toyota's having problems, Ford's having its issues, GM's having its issues. So really, you're kind of gambling any truck you buy, in my opinion. Um, I don't know what the total amount of vehicles that were affected with the issue that I had. I think they're really good on staying closed-lipped, but I can tell it was a big enough problem and over enough platforms with that 3-liter diesel that, it certainly caused some issues. But I think going forward, you just got anything that's mechanical can break. I come from a mechanic background. I was a aircraft mechanic in the Marines. And so I get how these things work, and you can't expect, I don't want to complain and just be like, oh, this one little issue happened and now the whole brand sucks. Because I don't believe that. Uh, Hopefully that I have better luck with this one, and they put together some good parts. And if it doesn't, well, we'll kind of navigate the process again and do what we got to do as consumers to get into a better position. But I guess to answer your question, I have high hopes that this truck will be better.
Did at any point were you thinking about just taking whatever cash you got and buying a different brand?
Yeah. Um, for full disclosure, I'm more of a Ford guy anyway. Um, the reason why I selected this one was because of the 3-liter diesel. Um, I don't know. I consume a lot of media and do a lot of research and kind of try to look into things. And I think that the 3-liter diesel, although it has some issues, and if you're to talk to anybody from Ram, with their eco diesel, yeah, it's kind of been plagued with a bunch of different kind of issues over the years. But I don't know that any brand is going to do better. It's kind of luck of the draw in this truck market right now, which is unfortunate because the price has never been higher. The value's never been. You know, I just think it's a gamble any which way you go.
So yeah, I mean, you might as well. You did the research, you got the truck build you wanted. It's like I could see where that'd be a problem because you want to say, "Screw you, GM. You lost me forever as a customer. I'm never buying a GM product again." I mean, and that's a fair statement. I think people in the comments are probably firing it off right now when they watch this video. They're probably saying, "I can't believe you go buy GM again." But when you've done the research and looked around, the marketplace, and I know you watched some of my videos on the Duramax diesel, that 3-liter, it when it works, it's really fantastic. I mean, the fuel economy is really impressive. The torque, the horsepower is impressive. I was really disappointed with the thrust bearing issue because that, as we talked, I still think that should be a recall. I hate the TSB on that. I think that's ridiculous and it's a screw up by GM. They should have
It's a
recalled
cop
it,
out.
at least tested everyone, for free, at least gave you a peace of mind or said, "Oh no, this is going to throw a code. You got a problem," and weeded those out. I hate that, and I hate the fact that and as a man to man, I mean, my God, you drive it home, you're excited, you're happy, that new truck feeling, and you go to on vacation and it breaks down. God damn, that's just oh, what a
I mean,
what
kind
a
of anecdotally, but we got back our I call it the old truck since we have this new one being built, but we get it back and my wife started crying. She's like, just you've been such a nightmare over the last few months trying to navigate this. And every day it's something new with GM. And like, I just don't trust this truck and I don't even want to ride in it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful truck. And thankfully, since the second time they fixed it, 4 months later, I've been driving it around, put about 400 or 500 miles on it. Phenomenal truck. It, I realized why I like it so much. The red of, the radiant red tint coat, beautiful color. The sun sparkles on it. I feel like that motor is pretty solid. The 10 speed, I know it's got some issues, but really enjoy that. Smooth shifting and like it really is a phenomenal truck when it works. It's just is it going to work? The gas mileage, you can kind of get similar numbers if you look across the market. Everything's kind of right there in with each other. And I think the difference in fuel economy and all these different things, but for what we want to use this truck for, that 3 liter diesel is kind of our best bet. Um, Otherwise, I'd have to make a jump to a 3/4 ton, and there's arguably about a $15,000 to $20,000 difference in all the things that you get in this 1500 series and the way I have it specked out into the 3/4 ton. And who knows what the future has for us. Um, that's kind of where we're at. I feel like you got to give these manufacturers the benefit of the doubt and that they're going to, do right. I'm a little nervous because I know they're doing a 27 refresh and different motors and this, that, and the other. But I don't know. I feel like they have a vested interest to build me a decent truck and send it over because I can't imagine if I have the same problem on the next truck. I mean, I'm gonna go nuclear on this thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's the lessons learned from this? I think talked about being patient, being kind, which is
Yeah,
really hard because you have a lot of money wrapped into this. You have a lot of emotions. Riding your motorcycle in Albuquerque in the winter is not the greatest option. There are some nice days. I've been to Albuquerque. There are some days it's fine.
yeah.
Other days it's
Most of
like,
the time it's fine, but yeah, some days you're like, no. Yeah, I had a few good lessons learned over this. Obviously, this is my first. I don't know, obviously, but this was my first experience with anything lemon law. Also dealing with such a large company that this. I read that GM did like 6 billion in stock buyback options last year. I mean, that's a ton of money to Obviously, they're making some money on their products. Um, I guess for me, the biggest one is you got to be patient, and that because they are such a large company, you really got to kind of tailor your expectations down a bit. Um, if you were to go off of just what you're reading on the Reddit or the Facebook or the, social media or using AI, I think they set really unrealistic kind of goals out there. It's like hey, is this a good price for this truck? And you get 50 people. Oh, you didn't negotiate a good, deal on
right.
this. You could have done better. Whereas the other people are like, yeah, that's a great deal. I paid way more than that. Like, you really just got to manage your expectations from the gate, um, and realize with such a large company that it's going to take a while. Um, I would say that had I just gone the check route, it would have been much faster and mm, probably would have saved me several months of heartache and pain. I think it's much easier for them over there to just write a check and mail it off and be done with you. And my mindset was, and I think each individual person that's going through this process is going to have different goals and kind of like what they want as an outcome. For me, it was I already invested all this time and research into which truck I wanted. I always spent this time and research and obviously flew out 1,000 miles away because, you know, I couldn't get that even close to that same truck here in my home state. They wanted like 6 grand more than what I paid for it and nobody was willing to budge here, you know. And that's why I had to take my business out of state. But in hindsight, boy, I would have paid a couple grand extra to not have to try to jump through the hoops and get people to try to advocate for me 1,000 miles away. Um,
Mm.
I would say my biggest ones are like, a don't buy a unicorn vehicle. If it's something that they don't have a ton and it's not really out there, it's much harder to replace. Um, this whole time, the high country with the max tow and the towing mirrors, there's only ever like 3 to 5 of those in the US. Most of them are either ordered already or purchased ahead of time. And you can't really fault GM for the dealerships not wanting to play ball, especially, 2,000 miles away, like Pennsylvania. I can't really fault GM for that. That being said, if that's going to be one of the options, they need to kind of think through that process and kind of have some things at play that forces the hand of these dealerships to do right by customers. Um, just my opinion, but don't present that as an option. Originally, when I had talked to one of the attorneys, they were kind of blown away that GM had agreed to kind of do this for me, and they said, we never are able to do that as attorneys. All we can ever do is strict buyback. Here's a check. Um, so he was like, yeah, you're doing a good job, kind of telling me I'm doing good. And I'm like, all right, well, I think you tend to question yourself a lot through this whole process. I know I did. And I'm like, am I making the right decision? This is a ton of money. Like, this is impact, my family. And I don't want to sound ungrateful because even to be in this position, I'm pretty blessed to be able to afford this truck in the first place. So yeah, I realize that. But going forward, I probably should have just, hey, just send me a check, 30 days, out of service, send me a check. If I lose, $1,000 on for the tint and whatever else, so be it. That's the cost of doing business in today's world. I don't really like it, but it's kind of the reality. And sometimes it's better to, take the
Take the money,
fish in the
walk
hand.
away. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the time and effort you spent, the stress you spent into that, I mean, that's thousands of bucks right there.
Yeah. I'm never going to get that time back. And, I, I've done several combat tours and been over the world a few times and had various jobs post, military that were in the high stress environments. And this is up there with the some of the highest stress that I've gone through. You
Wow.
want to do right by your family, your finances, and it's really hard. Um, One of my big frustrations is that the information out on the lemon law is so different for each person. So I would say navigating through it, go and look at your state specific lemon laws. Wherever you purchase that vehicle, look at those and use that as kind of your guide and barometer. um, I really don't feel like attorneys. I had this one company, and it's one of the largest ones. If you were to Google lemon law, this is probably one of the first ones that would pop up. And it was these people from California, and I'm talking with them, and they're giving me legal advice. And so I say, well, are you an attorney? No. Well, then you can't give me legal advice, And this is the representative and kind of middleman I mentioned. My guess is they kind of work as maybe like, say, like a paralegal. They kind of know what's going on, but they can't really give legal advice because they're not an attorney, but they do anyway. And they're trying to create this buffer so that it can just be a piece of paper here, sign off on this because you're the attorney, and then we'll submit it. And I don't know what kind of money they make for these things, but really they're not creating a lot of value, and nobody was interested. None of the attorneys were interested in any kind of, um my mind originally, it was, this is fraudulent. uh if a manufacturer is going to sell a vehicle that they know that's not going to work, That's material information that would change a buyer from buying that truck.
Mhm.
And really, you shouldn't be able to do that. That's fraud. you know, I'm not trying to, throw out things that I can't back up, but in my opinion, that is fraud. Um, and that's how I felt on this. But yeah, no attorney's going to want to take that. You really got to kind of mitigate your stuff. All the information that AI was kind of feeding me out was, hey, you can get this, that, and the other. Don't listen to that stuff. Um, it's unrealistic that you're going to be in a better position than when you started. And the time and effort that goes into it, totally not worth it. Um, I wish I had just said, hey, here's the 30 days, send me a check and been done with it.
And then you could have just went and ordered your own truck,
Yeah,
ordered again, whatever, waited for it or done. Yeah. Huh.
yeah. Um,
So, are you going to buy the extended warranty on a new truck?
Interesting you should ask that. So I had purchased an extended warranty on the one I currently have. Why? Because with a diesel, you have all these new different things that I had to learn how to navigate and what do they do. And um, I know there's issues with them. So we ended up purchasing one of those. GM will not pay you back for that. You got to go to the dealership for that. Um,
Oh,
we
really?
have still not fully navigated how we're going to be recompensated for that. That's still in the works. But yeah, I would say if you're planning on keeping a truck for any amount of time, uh, get the document, see what it says in it, and make sure that it's hitting all these different components. But yeah, my wife and I are at a time period in our life. I'm a disabled vet now, and uh, I have various different things going on. So our idea is to be able to go and travel and to kind of see, the kids are finally out the door and we want to do some traveling. We want to take my Harley with me. I'm a part of a large motorcycle organization. It's a 501(c) that raises money for veterans. So we like to ride places on the bike, and occasionally we want to be able to take it with us on our toy hauler and camp places. So our goal is to have this truck for a while. And so I would say, yeah, I'm probably gonna
Yeah.
do an extended
Yeah.
warranty again.
Yeah. I just thought with your issues that it's interesting that I thought with your issues that you'd probably want to buy an extended warranty, but it is interesting trying to navigate the payback on that as a separate item at the dealership level. That's really good information, and that'll be interesting to see how that all works out. But well, man, what a story! What a that you sit around a campfire and you're gonna have people, cussing at Jim or whatever. You're gonna get a lot of opinions on the story, but I think ultimately, from what I heard, I think you did the right thing. You ultimately at the end walked away with what you want. At they start at the beginning, you walked at the end with what you had at the beginning. You walked away with what you're gonna get what you want ultimately. It's going to be unfortunate all the time and effort you spend into it and the stress level and what you shouldn't have had to go through. It's you and I were talking about this on a phone call, and it's just timing was sucked because I think I did my video on the trust bearing issue like maybe a couple weeks after you got your truck or something because I
Yeah.
had just heard about it myself and I got confirmation from a couple different mechanics at dealership level. Dealer techs were getting several trucks in with that issue, and so I reported on it, not even thinking about what your I didn't know your situation existed, and wow, to hear your
Sure.
situation.
Yeah, it's so hard to navigate all the information out there. And I think it's real easy to kind of lose perspective. Um, it becomes a much larger problem than it may be because it's happening to you. And so every bit of information you get from a forum or a social media or a video on YouTube, all of these things are just negatively reinforcing all your worst fears and doubts, right? And I really don't know the scope of this whole thrust bearing issue. I was told it was the motor thing, right? So you got those in several GM products
Mhm.
through. GMC and Chevrolet. And so kind of compound those with all the issues they're having with the 6.2. And, you read all these people, why would you ever buy a GM product again? Well, pull up the, National Highway traffic. I can't remember the whole,
Oh,
um,
NHTSA. Yeah.
yeah, the
National
NHTSA.
Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Yeah. And you'll see that Ford kind of leads the way in recalls and, stuff. And there's a ton of problems plaguing Toyota. And I just watched your video the other day about how Ram was, I still call it Dodge. I have a hard time switching to the Ram thing. My age group, it's a Dodge. Either way, I
My
couldn't believe
brother,
that that
I,
one got the highest marks,
yeah,
like,
yeah, and yeah, I tell people it's funny. My brother has the same problem, and my brother's 2 years older than I am. I took my RHO up to Michigan, and he's like, "Oh, look at this big ass Dodge, and how cool it is." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay,
Well, it is a cool Dodge
it's really cool."
or a
It's
Ram,
really
whatever you want
expensive.
to call it. But I mean,
Yeah, but
it's a
it's like
great
so.
truck.
I mean, it's like I can't get around that either. I get it, and I as a journalist, I have to stay with the accurate name, but as fans, I just don't even read it anymore. I just read Dodge's Ram now in the comments. That's just like I go with. But yeah, I think you're right. And you needed a new truck, right? And the thing that's irritating with that engine is I really like that engine. Like I did people will say, well, they flew you out to this great resort and put you up and you had all this fine whiskeys and whatever. And I'm like, yes, every manufacturer does that. And you guys don't know on the back end how many of those trips I turned down because I lose
Yeah.
money on those trips. It's like, yes, I understand that. I understand the optics aren't great, right? I understand that, but when I do my reviews and such, it's like if I'm going to buy it, like that's how I treat it. Like I don't get paid by a manufacturer to do anything like that. It's garbage. Um, and I know people think that a press loan is me being paid for it. Well, I'm still making payments outside of my RHO when I'm driving the press loan around. So I don't I get the optics, but I really like the engine. I was the only. I remember doing the first drive, and it was sitting in the corner, and we were doing like the Z7 or ZR2 Silverado or something in Driggs, Idaho. And I was like, I'm gonna go drive the diesel because that's really excited me. And I drove it, interviewed the engineer there. I happened to reach out to the public relations team and be able to interview the engineer a couple more times on the channel. He's been on there, and really enjoyed what he built. I mean, and I'm still to this day shocked that manufacturers like Ford and Ram couldn't just copy it or do
Yeah.
something because it's I don't hate diesels at all. I think they're very efficient engines, very efficient powertrains. In the military diesels, and so it's like there's a really good piece to them, and this is a really good product, and it can when it works. Let's caveat that when it
Yeah.
works, it could be a really good product.
You could say that for any of the motors out there, right? I mean, they're all
Yeah,
so close in numbers. I had a kind of funny story that I thought maybe your viewers might enjoy. Um, there's the question of, do you put fuel additive
yeah, yep.
in your diesel, right? And so I get this truck back. I've had way too much time over the last 4 months to consume media and learn things about diesel and should you put it in, should you not put it in, what do you do about all these oil changes? So I added some hot shots to my my truck and just got it back. This is the second time I've gotten it back from getting fixed. I fill up the gas and I was like nervous to even put in the or diesel rather. I was nervous to even fill it up because I'm like, is this thing going to be reliable? Am I just going to lose more money by filling this truck up?
There
So
goes
I
your 80
fill it
bucks.
up. Yeah. Put an ounce and a half of fuel additive in there. Go drive it around for a while. Come back. Now I got what appears to me something dripping from the fuel area. Um, the Chevy diesel has you got the def on the right side and the diesel on the left. So I insert, this container in there and put in. Turns out that there's two flaps that go into the fuel tank. And I guess it's probably for like overfilling. So it'll vent out. Essentially what happened was I opened the first flap, put this diesel additive in there, didn't make it through the second, kind of trap door and make it actually into the fuel. And so now it's leaking out. So I go to the dealership really frustrated and like, this truck sucks. It never works. Now I'm dripping stuff all over. So they have it for like 30 minutes. And, I'm like, I'm really going to, make my point to Chevy and this dealership. And yeah, it was totally my error. And I had to apologize to the mechanic. And I was super embarrassed. I went and bought a case of beer to give them as the community I come from. When you mess up that big, you go and own it,
Yeah.
and it better be accompanied with some beers for the boys because you're creating extra work, And so I had to eat some crow on that one. But if you're adding diesel additive to your fuel, which they also told me was going to void my warranty and that you're not allowed to do it. But if you look at GM's actual manual, they actually suggest adding
Right.
some additives right there. So maybe some false information on that one, but do as you please. Make sure it gets in the second trap door and that, whatever device you're putting in there is long enough to open both of those.
It's funny you brought that up because you actually taught me something. You told me that story on my walk. I was taking a walk when we were talking. I was in Florida last couple of days on vacation, and I happened to rent a GMC Sierra 1500 from Enterprise. They have them at the Tampa Bay airport. You rent, and I was like, yes, if I'm going to rent a car, I'm going to rent a truck because I can do a review on the truck, right?
Nice.
And I happened to, it had a bench seat, and I happened to open up the lower bench seat, and there's a nozzle that's this long, that's black, and it's got a cone on the top. And my dad says, "What's that for?" And I said, "Oh, I know what that's for. AC told me what this is for." And now I didn't have to look at the manual because the manuals now are either, I think that one actually had a manual or it's online, which is a pain in the ass. I have several manuals saved on a hard drive, so I can just reference them occasionally. But I said, I know what this is for. And so during the review video, you'll see drop sometime soon. You'll see it. I'm actually, I didn't call you out, but I was like, this is what this is for. And I literally walked over.
I mean,
Yeah, you have no idea, but that, yeah, I had no idea. I guess I don't know if I'd even thought about it. If I've broken down, I'm out of gas, diesel, whatever. You sometimes you just freak out and just naturally go through your instincts to pour it in. You don't think of the cap, especially because that's a capless on that. So there's no cap to
right.
tighten down. And so I think that it's two vapor locks because you're trying to keep because the gas systems work by making sure that there's no error in, you don't get error in that system. And so you have these two vapor locks and it goes. So yeah, but you taught me something there. You taught me many things in this video, but you taught me and a bunch of other people what that is for.
I mean, before you go yell at your GM mechanics or whatever dealership you're at, make sure you're don't stink first. I was so embarrassed and I was like, you know what? It's good to get humbled every once in a while. This doesn't feel good. Maybe be kind to the guys fixing your truck.
Well, this has been a great video. I'm going to end it here in a minute. I just wanted to say thank you for your time on this, and fingers crossed for you. And hopefully, honestly, hopefully I don't see you again, because I feel like if I see you again,
Yeah.
I'm going to knock on my wood table here. But hopefully you're a fan and you watch my videos very occasionally if you're from another truck, whatever. But hopefully this ship is done, bringing it to the harbor. You're going to just ride this new truck out for many, many thousands of miles of happy times.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures of my new truck once it comes in. And honestly, thank you for having a platform like this. And I think you put out a lot of great educational information out there. And even if it's a brand that I'm not interested in, I still find myself kind of watching your videos and saying, hey, what's going on with this? Like, like to be informed on the market and different things that are changing. And, it's a big space. And definitely watch a bunch of different people and you got some of the better content out there. So thanks for putting that out for all of us,
I appreciate it. I do try my best at this stuff. I really want to make this channel make, like I said, inform consumers. If nothing else, if you're informed not to buy a truck, great. If you're informed to buy a truck, great. I don't really care on that aspect, but just be informed. That's my biggest point on this. So yeah. There you go. There's my conversation with AC. I thank him for his service and God bless him. hopefully this new truck has no problems. I got my fingers crossed, my toes crossed, whatever I have to do to get some luck his way, because that man needs it. And hopefully he has many years of enjoying his new truck and really explores the country as he plans on doing and raising money for veterans. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure to check out other videos and channel up over here, website down below as well, pickuptrucktalk.com. As always, thanks for watching. I will see you down the road.